muted me.
Bienvenue.
You might. Thank you so much for your patience. A lot of inspirational speakers have gone for the last 3 days. We're winding down to the end, but it's not yet the end for you creatives. I want to thank you for your patience, and I would like to thank you very much for your patience. I trust that you had a wonderful lunch break, and the extra lunch that you had, I hope that was good too. The exhibition outside will go on until 7 o'clock, so have no worry. You will get an opportunity to view the exhibition later. I want to introduce I'm not talking. I wasn't talking. All right. I want to introduce Dr. Didicus Jules to make a presentation, and then we'll have our panel discussion, which will culminate the 3 days of Unleash. Let's welcome Dr. Didicus Jules. He will be presenting on One Creative Caribbean.
Thank you very much. Sorry?
Well, after this, then we'll go because
Mic check. Mic check.
it ain't sure, mate.
Okay, thanks very much, colleagues. Let me preface this by saying that these 2 days have been like 2 years for me. I have never heard so much energy, creative ideas, enthusiasm in any regional meeting I've attended in 8 years being at the OECS. So my task is to, I think we all agree that there's a dimension of this that is best done through a regional approach. And that's what I'm going to do today, to paint the picture of that regional approach. Prime Minister Dicon and the Minister of Creative Economy, Honorable Lennox Andrews, as well as the person I describe as the creative mind on steroids, Orlando, they all reference the same quotation at the opening of this creative Tete Sam. Now, for those who don't know, the Haitian concept of Tete Sam is like, I don't know if Grenada still has that Creole heritage, but there's a Koudme. Koudme is where it's the community work that we used to do in the revolution. Everybody gives voluntary labor. But in the Haitian concept of Tete Sam, this is a bringing together of hearts, minds, and hands for common purpose. So it's a more profound concept. So this for me has been a Tete Sam. But the quotation that everyone has referenced is that there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Now think of it this way. A good idea is like a ship on unexplored waters, but facing horizons of anticipation that are also clouded by different degrees of uncertainty. You get that? We are confident about the possibilities and its potential, but the journey has to be very carefully charted. But what makes this idea exponentially more powerful is when the moment meets a confluence of positive circumstance. In other words, when the timeliness of the idea gets caught in and connected to favorable winds and tides that enables it to move with even greater speed and confidence towards the land of promise. In the last couple of days, there has been brainstorming, the excavation of experience, the sharing of lessons, and the shaping of consensus for that journey. The many branches of the creative family have reached a point of resolution, and Orlando and his team have a virtual encyclopedia of concrete ideas on what needs to be done. What I would like to do in this One Caribbean wrap-up is to suggest how Grenada's ambition can be the lead ship on this journey and bring to your attention the real opportunities for immediate action that can accelerate our collective journey. And the OECS is already engaged on initiatives with low-hanging fruit, ready to be picked, as well as longer-term and strategic benefits. I also hope to dispel any residual doubt about the huge potential, let me repeat that, the huge potential of the creative economy, and to provide specific examples of how doable and how easy this can be done if we maintain focus. In all of the Caribbean, Jamaica is the best example of the global power of culture. The idea of Jamaica, the brand Jamaica, the Jamaica identity are all distinct expressions on the global stage that gives Jamaica a degree of power and global influence way beyond its size. The culture of Jamaica has achieved more for Jamaica as a small island developing state in influencing and shaping global consciousness than few larger nations could ever hope to achieve through the imposition of their military might or their economic clout. It would be a fascinating thing to undertake a deep study into the ways in which Jamaican culture has not only become a global brand, but more significantly, how it has influenced global politics, the role of reggae artists Marley, Tosh, and many more in the anti-apartheid struggle and the liberation of Africa, in how it has influenced natural and organic lifestyles and the new urban chic, vegan diets, medicinal marijuana, dreadlocks, and so much more. That is the soft power of Jamaican culture. UNCTAD concluded that in 2015, Jamaica's creative industries contributed 3.7 billion, or 5.2% of the country's GDP. It has also been estimated that the royalties from the intellectual products of Bob Marley, including the use of his name and image, if properly collectible, would exceed the national debt of Jamaica. That is the economic power of Jamaican culture. Closer to home, in the OECS, a study was done by the Caribbean Development Bank. What's happening here? Clicker. Just flip the slide for me, please. Closer to home in the OECS, a study was done by the Caribbean Development Bank on Dominica as part of a sample compendium that sought to map opportunities in the creative economy, and it detailed the primary cultural and creative sectors as well as the specific barriers that hinder their growth and expansion. And it concluded, as you see there, that copyright-based industries contributed 41.6 million EC, or 3.3% of Dominica's GDP. And you can see some of the primary cultural and creative sectors that were mapped out in that study, as well as the barriers that were identified, not unfamiliar to you here based on our discussions in the last couple of days. Let me use the opportunity to inform as well that the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, the CCIF, through which this study was done, was established in 2017 with an initial $2.6 million in capitalization from the Caribbean Development Bank. And that facility is intended to be a multi-donor fund, which is supposed to support the development of the creative industries sector in the Caribbean. Now, I'm not sure whether it has been exhausted, but Grenada should certainly engage CDB on this. If the time has come for this idea, even if it is exhausted, it is time for CDB to replenish. And I will also add my voice to the appeal to CDB to get this done, not just for, I think Dominica was probably the only OECS member state it was done for, but we want it done for all of the OECS, and starting with Grenada. Then, but to cap it all, colleagues, to cap it all, nothing illustrates the power of the individual contemporary creative than the case of Rihanna from Barbados. The English poet John Donne has asserted, and I quote, "No man, or in this time, no person is an island." But the case of Rihanna demonstrates that it is possible for someone to be more than an island. As I cited earlier in the event, can you flip the slides, please? Yeah. Rihanna's net worth, US 1.4 billion. Billion. The total GDP of Barbados, US 4.9 billion. If Rihanna, as you heard me say before, was a currency, 3.5 Riris would be equal to the entire GDP of Barbados. By age 24, her social media following amassed 28 million on Twitter. And remember, I think we should all be grateful for the presentation made by our Jamaican colleague in marketing, where he explained the power of and the use of social media. And she also had 66 million people on Facebook, followers on Facebook. What does that mean? A single Facebook post from Rihanna to her 66 million Facebook followers, inviting them, wanna join me for crop over in BIM, would generate more buzz than the Barbados Tourism Authority could ever hope to reach, except through a massive budget. If only 5% decided to follow her, Barbados could not find accommodation for the 3.3 million that is 5% of her following. That is the intersection of soft and economic power of a single Caribbean creative. Killer, are you around? If he's not, I hope he's checking this, because that's his brief from this encounter. Reach there fast and flex it for Grenada and the OECS. So here is the beckoning land of opportunity and possibility. Here is the course correction of history from the Middle Passage, a return to Africa. The signing of the partnership agreement between continental Africa and the Caribbean as the sixth region of Africa, as part of the African diaspora, provides unimaginable potential, and most of all, for the creative sector. If you think about it this way, in this agreement, we're talking creative sector, agriculture, tourism, every economic sector. There is nothing we can grow in this Caribbean that Africa cannot grow bigger, faster, cheaper, and easier than we can. And even if the entire OECS was to grow something, we could not compete with Africa, which speaks to why we need to look at areas of comparative advantage and how we leverage these things. We all know of the rise. So the 5 of the 6 independent OECS member states signed the partnership agreement with Africa out of the 7 original signatories. We have been working assiduously to ensure that the OECS grouping is able to take full advantage of this opportunity and retain some prominence in this partnership. We all know of the rise of Nollywood and Bollywood to the point where Netflix and other platforms now have to accommodate the creative work of the black and brown children of the human family. We all would have noted the increasing assertion of creative works by black creatives. Some of our brothers and sisters have demonstrated it here in this week. The increasing assertion of their creative works in the West and the increasing prominence of African culture. No. Yeah. Oops. Sorry. You all went ahead of me there. Okay. The unspoken driver behind this paradigm shift.
Where older persons take care of teenagers
Can you
as they come into the game.
stop the video for me, please? Yeah. The unspoken driver behind this paradigm shift is the power of demographics commanding the attention to the authenticity of black imagination. So don't think that all of a sudden black is cool and attractive because it just gets cool and attractive. But the raw economics of that is demographics. The size of the African continent, the size of the black population demographically in the US, and that is what's driving, that is what's following the money. That's what the money is following. because in contradistinction to that, you have all what's happening with increasing the rise of the transnational right and all of the degradation of black people and brown people in these locations. The Atlantic Council and many other think tanks have held summits and symposia on the creative industries in Africa. Music, and you can see them listed there, music, dance, art, photography, film, sculpture, festivals, fashion and design. And note carefully the genres that are listed in this slide as prominent opportunities. For us in the OECS, the Africa Partnership represents a unique and special opportunity. Our roots are predominantly African. Our culture is a unique blend of the civilizations of the world, but with an elemental African DNA. The earning potential of the creative sector far exceeds any other sector and represents a special advantage in the context of the Africa Agreement, as Africa constitutes 17% of the global population and 40% of the continent is under 15 years of age. This potential can be enhanced by OECS incentives designed to build the creative sector and to project it into the African space. Engaging in this space does not mean that we are starting on a blank page. Over the past decades, there are OECS diaspora nationals who have been actively engaged on the continent and who are well recognized. Two of these have reached out to us at the OECS and are converging their work with the Africa Partnership. Taj Weeks, who is a St. Lucian, is an honorary citizen of Ghana and has produced the Hands Across Africa Music Festival for several years, bringing together reggae artists from the Caribbean and Africa to build on the power of reggae for social and political emancipation. Commissioner Gordon Williams is a multiple Grammy Award winner, producer, and engineer. He's been in the recording sessions of some of the most celebrated albums of all time. He worked with Lauryn Hill on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. He worked on Santana's Supernatural. He worked with Amy Winehouse on her debut album, Frank. And his passion is identifying new music talent in the Caribbean, and he's offered to establish recording studios in the OECS. Allow me to take you on a quick scan of the incredible potential and diversity of cultural expression within the OECS that is of world-class standard that we can project into Africa and globally. So here we have it. Start with Montserrat St. Patrick's Day Festival in March, which celebrates the island's Irish heritage and includes parade, music, cultural events. The dominant color is green. Again, in the session on education, I spoke about the importance of interdisciplinarity. If green is the celebration of St. Patrick's Day, green can also be the celebration of the greening of Montserrat. So you bring in environmental themes together with cultural themes. Antigua Sailing Week, April, May, a world-renowned sailing regatta that takes place in Antigua every year and attracts sailors from all over the world. Grenada Chocolate Festival in May celebrates Grenada cocoa production and includes chocolate tastings, etc. A parenthetical note. In 1980 or 81, George Brizan, of blessed memory, produced a paper on the Grenada cocoa industry that revealed that Grenadian cocoa was the prize ingredient in Cadbury's luxury line of chocolates. And Brizan, the statistical economist that he was, dug into this and showed that when you look at the employment generated from the input of Grenadian cocoa into the production of chocolate process in Cadbury, the employment was 100,000 people. The population of Grenada at the time was barely 100,000. So that showed if the processing of Grenadian cocoa was done as a luxury line in Grenada, every Grenadian unemployment could have been wiped out through that. And more than that, he went on to show the figures of the difference earned by cocoa farmers in Grenada exporting their quality beans to the UK and the difference in value added between the price of the chocolate and the price of the beans. So, St. Lucia, right now, May, the Jazz and Arts Festival. In Nevis, Culturama, June and July, which celebrates the island's culture and heritage and includes music, dance, parades, and other events. BVI, Emancipation Festival in July, August. Dominica, well, best known among us, the World Creole Music Festival. Again, incidentally, people may not realize, Creolophone Africa, Creole-speaking Africa, Francophone Africa, is 2/3 of the population of Africa. Already Dominica has started bringing in African artists to participate. So here's what we propose to Dominica. You continue having your annual Dominica Creole Festival, continue to bring in African artists, but every second year, in addition to having it in Dominica, you have it in Africa. And then that way you attract a larger market. Can you imagine the economic potential of that, Orlando? So, and then St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the 9 Mornings Festival, totally unique Garifuna thing, a unique Christmas tradition that includes early mornings, street concerts, cultural events, and so on. So that just paints, and this is not a full picture, but I just wanted to give a snapshot to show you that there's something unique and special in terms of cultural events and products in each of the OECS member states. And then we look at the opportunities in music, and this is where it's incomplete, but we're brainstorming on this, and a lot of what happened here, because we want to use Grenada as a lead ship in this journey, will be informed by your deliberations here. In music, what about us having an Afro-Caribbean Jazz Festival every 2 years? In dance, an Afro-Caribbean Festival of Drum and Dance can be hybrid, as you know, face-to-face and virtual. Traditional masquerade festivals. All of our countries have unique masquerades, but that is elementally an African art form. And we do it just as pure tradition. There's also a dimension of research. Remember the session on education? Your students here, students in the OECS, should be researching to understand what is the African origin of that. There's a lot to be excavated from a point of view of history in this process. There's an interesting story I want to give you all. In the early 70s, as a student in Barbados at Cave Hill, and having been a founding member of something called the Folk Research Center in St. Lucia, we linked up with a guy called Elombe Motley, who's actually the uncle of Prime Minister Mia Motley. Elombe Motley was seen as an outcast in Barbados because he wore dashiki in a time when Barbados was quintessentially English and colonial. And he was pushing African elements of Barbadian culture. So we worked with Elombe, and Elombe built a place called Yoruba House, and brought in 2 lecturers from the University of Ibadan, one a musicologist, and the other was a drumologist. And I don't know how many of you know of the Barbadian landship, just a quick show of hands. But yeah, it's a Bajan thing, but the way the landship is like a friendly society, a Susu type thing, but it is modeled after a European 18th century sailing vessel. So you have a captain, first mate, all the ranks represented. That's the hierarchy of the society. And all of their dances and movements imitate the whole process of running one of those 18th century galleons. Now, those of us from the rest of the OECS used to give our Bajan friends a lot of pressure. We say, boy, you're all really colonial. There's no African drums in Bajan culture. All you have is kettle drum and flute, and then you all do this sailing ship thing. That makes no sense. You know what the African lecturers discovered? First of all, in 1972, on the law books of Barbados, there was still a law that called for the amputation of your hands if you beat an African drum. Now, clearly, it was below that. Nobody realized that was on the law books till that time. So they brought that to light. It was immediately rescinded, of course. But that explains why, in the culture of Barbados, with the brutality of slavery in that plantation space, that African instruments did not exist. They also discovered that all of the dance movements of the landship were West African dance movements, but just using the motions of the ship activity to reproduce these art forms. Again, I want to connect that to what we talked about education, because that's a whole unexplored area for our students to do their own research, to learn about their culture, to amplify the African elements, and more than that, to link back to Africa. That's why I said earlier in these remarks, the return, a reversal of the Middle Passage in a different way to Africa. So, in art, publishing a catalog of OECS artists and their art, curating photo exhibitions of Caribbean photographers. I had tried earlier when I got into the OECS to establish a platform on which Caribbean photographers can put up their art. You try going on any of these regular commercial international sites and look for photos of the Caribbean. All you see is sand and sea and tourism scenes. Very few images of real Caribbean people in their everyday lives. Now imagine all of the photographers we have in the Caribbean, especially the young guys, being able to put their work on a platform and the royalties going directly to them, but managing and controlling the IP. And then we have film. We're talking about OECS participation in African film festivals. Well, again, I didn't even know that there were so many Grenadian. Our friend here, Simon, look at what he's accomplished in the European space and internationally. It's no longer about OECS participation in African film festivals. It's using our own to build our own festivals, but also participate globally. Training for OECS film talent in Africa, training by our own experts from the diaspora, a digital platform for cataloging and sale of film and theater, especially comedy, from Africa and the Caribbean. The other genre is sculpture, organizing virtual and physical exhibitions of art, including carvings, designing again a digital platform for the sale of art from Africa and the OECS Caribbean. The OECS actually, on the 15th, is going to be running a virtual trade show that includes the exhibition of works of art from across the OECS. If any of you are not aware of it, because we launched it 2 days ago, and again, our knowledge of what exists in the space is limited. You know, you go by somebody recommends somebody who recommends somebody, and that's how we aggregate. But we now have to make a conscious effort, colleagues, to build a catalog, do a survey, do a census of Caribbean creatives, so that we can be in touch with each other, encourage the formation of professional associations, so that, which is what I've done on my WhatsApp. I have OECS not photographers, visual artists. It's only about 32 people, but it's growing because everybody, as we come across people, we add them to the list. And the brief there is not about bureaucratic dictation. I will not set up an OECS culture desk, because that means one person is going to sit there pretending to manage culture in the OECS. The approach we're taking is encourage the creatives in every sector to form their own associations. Debate, discuss, move towards the formation of a professional association so that you can then represent your views. When we have an association, and we're very careful about some of the diligence on this, I don't want two people coming to me and say they're an association of artists, because who you really representing? There was a time in the 70s when in any of the Caribbean islands, particularly one of the OECS states, you meet two people on the street in the capital and they represent 6 NGOs, because in those days money was easy to find for NGOs. So basically what we need is evidence of good governance, an elected executive of a bona fide organization whose finances are properly managed. Once these two criteria are met, you have a seat at the table. We can convene a meeting of the ministers of culture in the OECS to meet with that association for you to present your ideas to the ministers on what you want. We've not even reached that stage yet, but get some of the ideas. The artists are saying to us, the taxes, import taxes on the goods they require for the visual arts is exorbitant and injurious to them. Now, the governments, we cannot go to governments and say, remove the tax on art materials, full stop. But we can suggest to the governments, consider removing the taxation on goods imported through the OECS pool procurement service for the Artists Association at no taxes at all. So it means only professional artists get that benefit. And it encourages us to work together to be an association that autonomously makes determination of policy on visual arts for artists. So in terms of festivals, well, there's no end of what we can do. I mean, we, in our genetics, is fete and festival. So film festivals, Joint Africa OECS short film festivals with youth creatives, the Dominica World Creole Festival that I said, especially occurring in Francophone Africa, Fashion and Handicraft, and OECS Export the Runway Festival, linkage of Creole festivals in the OECS with Francophone Africa, Hands Across Africa, which is already happening with Taj Weeks, One Heartbeat, discovering and twinning OECS and Africa music talent. Imagine these shows on TV, discovering talent. We can do this with our own. Institutionalizing the Tenmi Carriacou with Sierra Leone. I just read last week that this happened in Carriacou, a tribe in Africa who apparently are well connected by descent and so on. Carriacou is descendants of that tribe are in Carriacou. And then jam festivals. Then the fashion and design, incorporation of fashion and design in festivals also, but having symposia on design for designers of all genres. And underlying all of that is the establishment of copyright and licensing protocols for creatives in the Caribbean. And culture need not just be seen in a narrow light. Sport is also a form of culture, and that again is where the performance of black people in that area is well known. So their participation of OECS teams in African tournaments in all of these sporting disciplines, and then sporting development, twinning African specialized sporting institutions with OECS institutions. Let's look at Grenada and its uniqueness. So you have Spice Mass, which everybody knows, August, Carriacou Maroon and String Band Music Festival in April, Pure Grenada Music Festival in May, Guave Fisherman's Birthday Celebrations in June, the Chocolate Festival in May, the Labe Dashin Festival in October. Beyond just the festival part, which is fete and good time, there are huge opportunities in there. There are huge opportunities in there for going deeper and further. So for example, colleagues, the Chocolate Festival, the Dashin Festival, why not challenge chefs in Grenada, students of the culinary arts, to take these products and come with new dishes, new products, culinary products out of that could be unique and add to the repertoire of attraction in these areas. Then we talked about the importance of intellectual property, the intangible world cultural heritage, the spices of Grenada, the nutmeg, mace and its derivatives, the oil dung, the Grenada cocoa. All of these things need to be strengthened and protected internationally by the protected geographical indicators and the designations of origin for these products. Nobody can sell coffee anywhere in the world and call it Blue Mountain coffee unless it comes from Jamaica, Blue Mountains. Nobody can sell fizzy wine and call it champagne except it comes from Champagne in France. All of these things there and much more that we have yet to look at in the OECS and in Grenada can be subject to those restrictions and benefits to ourselves. So there are many representations of the universe of creative economy. But I've taken the liberty, and these presentations are going to be shared with you by Orlando and his team, so you can, take your time to go through that. But I just designed this specifically to show the elements of the creative economy of greatest potential for Grenada and the OECS. So the four main pillars, because the creative thing, as we've seen in the last 2 days, is huge and immense, but digital arts, fashion and design, music, the performing arts, and the visual arts. And all of these break out into different ways, and you see that some of the dotted lines show the possibility for cross-disciplinary fusion. So when we talk about digital arts, fashion and design, and again, remember the young Grenadian who was in the Royal College of Architecture. Imagine we need to start designing our buildings, not just as modern-looking buildings, or if we want to keep the traditional genre of architecture in place, but we need to start conceptualizing our public spaces as places of peace and harmony and, collective goodwill. Right? So that requires a particular type of urban planning. So public space design linked to urban planning, right? All of that tied into the visual arts, because again, placing the arts in public spaces, a phenomenon happening in St. Lucia now is on all of the dirty blank walls now, young artists are putting up colorful paintings, and it just that alone changes the scene. Those of you who've been to the St. Lucia Jazz Festival, I remember years ago suggesting to the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, every time there's a lunchtime concert in the square in the heart of Castries, there's a certain sense of calm and peace in the city at that time because of the sedate, cool vibe of the jazz. I'm thinking, but, every Sunday we have the police band. Instead of having these nothing against reggae and so on, but sometimes music can either hype you or it can calm you down. And especially when you have a situation of aggravated crime, the role of music in producing harmony in a public space should not be underestimated. So can we have these concerts where we play cool music, gospel music, different, cool down vibes? There's a time for the jump up and the rah-rah, right? But cool down vibes that can improve the public temper. So these are when you get to look at the map, you'll see the possibilities for yourself. To conclude, these are my takeaway points, as my teacher here has pointed out to us. So she don't have to make notes on that. To conclude, one, the creative economy represents our fastest track to niche economic opportunity in the global space. Secondly, the outreach to Africa is the most viable speedway that this idea whose time has come should travel. Thirdly, building the creative economy also requires the radical transformation of education. Fourthly, it is not just about the money, it is about building soft power as well as creating new economic opportunity. Fifthly, and lastly, the creative arts in education is about bringing the imagination into learning and injecting that in all subject areas, science and technology, languages, self-confidence, and so much more. Our creative imagination has always been the source of our resilience as a people. It has fortified our spirit in the long night of slavery. It has empowered us to create something out of nothing. I would say everything out of nothing. It has shaped our dreams, and it is what will create our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jules. I know he called me teacher, but I think I'm more like the principal now. Yeah? You guys have gotten so much in 3 days, and like he said, how much years? 5 years? Easily, this conference could have been 1 week, and we could have charged you $250 US. So you should be grateful that this opportunity was given to you for free. There was one slide that Dr. Jules posted with oil down, and I know all they get hungry again, eh? You mustn't do people that. And all they get hungry again? Oh, that one had pork. Is he pork in that one? That was a vegan oil down? Okay, all right. All right, stand with me, everybody, before I introduce our panel. Somebody say, Lord have mercy, what's she making us do? Give yourself a little stretch. Yesterday we had a stretching competition. Today we're going to sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes. All right, y'all ready? 2, 3. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Come on. Shoulders, knees, and toes, and eyes, and ears, and nose. All right, don't slow down, don't slow down. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our panel. You may have your seats. Leading this panel is the man, the creative man on steroids, Mr. Orlando Romaine. He's going to moderate this session on, oh yeah. One Creative Caribbean. Oh. I don't think it matters, you know. Well, y'all have your own system visually. Y'all creatives ain't easy, you know, the OCD kicking in. They're like the wrong chair. Your picture is not there. All in good, all in easy. All right, I want to introduce the panelists. The first panelist, he goes by the name Angel Cardenas. Ooh, that Spanish sounding good, right? He is the Urban Development, Water and Creative Industries General Manager at the Caribbean Development Bank of Latin America, an Eisenhower Fellow at Eisenhower Fellowships. Angel is a professional with over 20 years of experience, hands-on experience in strategic planning and development finance at the World Bank, among other financial institutions. Representing the Caribbean Development Bank of Latin America, Angel Cardenas. Our next panelist goes by the name Dr. Stephen Fletcher. He's a former ambassador to the EU in Brussels. He was a former ambassador designate to China, and he's currently based at the Rural Development Unit at the Ministry of Economic Development. Dr. Stephen Fletcher. Our other panelists, you already met them this week. Let's welcome back Dr. Didicus Jules. Did he run away? Dr. Didicus Jules and Alison Francis. One Creative Caribbean. Alison, you see your fans there? All right.
Mic's on? All right, lovely. All right, Grenadians, friends of Grenada, how are you all feeling today? Is there anybody as excited about the prospects of this creative economy as I am? I have to say, in putting this together, my head was just focused on getting it done, and really inspiring the creatives here, but I felt inspired myself by the testimonies, the accounts, the vision, the passion, the conviction of everyone in this room. I feel reinvigorated and more convinced that the time I've taken away from my professional life is worth it, to really give back and do something that I felt needed to be done for a long time, which is strategize and push this sector forward for every one of you, every one of us in this room. I was almost brought to tear yesterday by Mr. Killer's story. I was lifting my head up like this, not to show the tears. So I'm really moved by all of this, and as we wrap up, I want us to be mindful of the journey that is necessary to get to where we want to go. It's not going to happen overnight. But I feel with the support of the OECS, CAF Bank, yourselves, the government of Grenada, we can get to that destination we envision. So just give yourselves a round of applause again for being here and supporting this. So I'm going to start with my dear friend from Grenada, Dr. Stephen Fletcher. Dr. Dilkash Jules articulated his sentiments about Grenada being the lead for this creative economy in the OECS. As an economist, how do you see us jumping on that agenda immediately? What are the things we need to do to jump on that train immediately?
All right, well, thank you very much. Am I on? Are you hearing me? Yes. Yeah? Great, good. Thank you very much for having me as panelist here. This is a great question, and probably it is the most central question for this evening. How do we leverage this burst of energy, this burst of talent that we have experienced in the last 3 days in this room, and how we leverage that to a much broader context? I think this is where we really need to take this very strategic question that's been posed. So how do we do this? Let us be mindful of the following. Yep, so as I take the next few seconds to help paint a strategic roadmap for where we go, let us understand this. On Wednesday morning, I walked in here, and in my economic development paradigm, I was thinking land space, limited. I was thinking the blue economy, limited. And then I walked in here, and by Wednesday night, I had a couple sleepless hours, because what this event really brought home to me as one who thinks development, economic pathway forward, how we move this country forward, is that we have an untapped resource that is yet to be leveraged. I have had long conversations with my dear parishioner, Mr. Killer, many a times on the use and the leveraging of culture for economic development purposes, but also himself as a leading talent of Grenada. And in my reflections in the past few days, I concluded Orlando on the following. One, whereas Grenada is contained by physical space, I really do believe that Grenada is a creative idea. Grenada embraced creativity and talent, and therefore, when we think of Grenada, I think we have to readjust the way we think about it, and think about it in the context of culture, creativity, technology, and so forth. And that will certainly expand our ideas on how we leverage this country for development purposes. So what do? We do not jump on anything right now. We already have it. It is right here now. So what we do from here is the following. May I suggest that this event in the last 3 days brought the world of culture eyes upon us through social media, through talk on the streets and so on. It is already, we are seeing the culmination, the convergence of a lot of ideas on Grenada as a creative center. This event has really served to put Grenada on the map along with our carnival and so forth. So we have this. The second thing that needs to be done to leverage that central theme that we want to build is, believe it or not, the creatives that are here and outside has to hold our feet to the fire, hold the government feet to the fire to deliver on what comes out of here, right? We have to really leverage this. And what does that mean? You know as well as I do, I don't mean the real fire, right? What we mean is that coming together as teams of persons, groupings of persons, working with the Creative Affairs Department and working that roadmap out and being part of it. Let us move from being asking, well, or waiting for somebody to ask us to get involved. But by your very participation here in the last 3 days, you're already saying, I want to be involved. So come knock on the doors of Mr. Orlando, knock on the doors of the other people and say, I'm here. We've been here for 3 days. Orlando set out a roadmap on Wednesday. We want to follow through on this. That's the second thing. The third thing that we ought to do is really define, despite the plethora of advantages and opportunities that Dr. Jules have so perfectly presented to us, we have a fundamental decision to make. It is fundamental as is it strategic from an economic point of view. Can we identify the 2 or 3 things that we can have a competitive advantage on and leverage those? We cannot be everything to everybody. We cannot be everything to everybody. But we can be the best in some things. Let us identify the best that we can be and leverage it. Mr. Killer is already the spearhead of that spear that we have in culture, particularly in music. We have others. We heard from Mr. Charles this morning, and many of you others who've been here for the past few days, Mr. Bullen and others. We need to mobilize this, put it together, and get it done. And finally, because I can go through a long list, finally, and very importantly, as a very low-hanging fruit, get the office fully operational, fully accessible, and let's roll with it. All right?
Well, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. That's a huge mandate. Grenada leading the OECS in the creative economy. Are you guys ready for that challenge? I'm not convinced. Are you guys ready for that challenge? Thank you. Anil, as a friend of the region, someone we occupy the same nautical space, Latin America, the Caribbean. As a matter of fact, we have more Latin-speaking countries within the Caribbean than we do have, or citizens than we have English-speaking citizens. And so it's important for us to be able to leverage all partnerships. As an expert in development with emphasis on the creative industries, from your standpoint in developing these economies before, what are 4 things you would recommend that we do immediately, and how can your organization support that?
Thank you, Orlando. I want to take 10 seconds to thank, on behalf of CAF and myself. I mean, when I flew in today, my colleague Stacy Richards told me, you have no idea the energy you will find in this audience. And I had a long night. I flew from Caracas to Port of Spain, to Panama, Port of Spain, and then came here, 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And I thought to myself, sure. But the second I walked in, and I'm seeing you guys, I mean, this is very inspiring. So I want to congratulate you as well, and thank you for making me part of this conversation. And I'm going to go with the challenge that was just mentioned, because I think the first thing is to actually buy in the idea that the creative industries and cultural industries are the key to mobilize and change the economy and to make it resilient societies. And I'm saying this because we've been sitting around this topic for many, many years. If we think about last October or September, if I remember correctly, there was the first Mondiacult conference by the UNESCO conference. It took 40 years to have that conference. 40 years passed to put culture and creativity industries on the map and discuss about the potential, the economic potential it has. Finally, 168 countries signed and agree that the path forward is the creative and cultural industries. So we need to believe this is the way forward if we want to change, or at least to improve our economic prospects and our job creation prospects in the region. So that would be my first one, and I will give you another 4. So if you allow me just to have 5.
No problem.
Okay. So based on that, and understanding that we're discussing cultural and creative economies or industries because we believe they promote economic growth and social development, I think the first one is to understand we need to make it. We always talk about the employment of the future at the bank. We say we're living in an era where there's going to be automated jobs, and there's this 70% of young people in the region that have no the skills or the capacity to enter the workforce. And to make it even worse, they're facing this challenge of automated jobs, and they might not have any job prospects in the future. So what can we do to actually provide them with the future? Employment opportunities. And this is where creative and cultural industries come. But for that, the first thing is that we need to make this decent, sustainable job opportunities. We need to create a market, or at least we need to incentivize that market so there will be employment opportunities. We have to understand this is an opportunity for young people, for the younger generation, to have decent and sustainable jobs. And perhaps another Rihanna will come up along the way, or that would actually be more than 2 or 3 times the GDP of Barbados. The second one is understand, and most of you, and as I was reading the concept note on my way here, came here to see how you could get or secure investment. How could you get funding to move forward with your entrepreneurial activity? We need to rethink how to mobilize resources. Just to illustrate this, a couple of weeks ago at the bank, we had a call from, it was in Colombia, a content producer, Netflix content producer, that they had a couple series that they were launching and they needed financing. So we sat down, we said, you know what, we could probably talk about this, but we need other banks to join. When we talked to the other banks, our shock was that they couldn't understand the business model. They had an amazing idea, but that amazing idea and product did not fit the typical standards of credit analysis assessments. We need to find the ways to mobilize financial resources in a different fashion. We need to help making new markets. And as your question, what can we do as a bank? We need to be market makers. We need to take more risk. We need to partner up with entrepreneurs or venture capital funds that actually believe in cultural and creative industry. We need to develop an asset class of this. If we do that, if we get scale, then we'll be securing enough funding to make, again, those job opportunities I was talking about before. But then it is key that we don't lose sight that creative and cultural industries are rooted in our territories or our cultural heritage. I mean, it is our natural capital, our cultural capital that would give you the upper hand or the advantage to move forward and be competitive. I mean, it is the music, it is the spices, it is the chocolate, are the festivals that it was mentioned in the keynote speech that could actually craft our strategy to export our culture, our creativity around the world. But in order to do that, we need to remain in connection with our territories, with our people. It has to be bottom-up approach consensus. And to do so, it's key. This understanding of creative and cultural industry strategies are rooted in our planning processes and in our discussion at the bottom of our societies. I mean, I do not see, or I cannot see, a mayor in anywhere in the region or a governor talking about development or planning without incorporating culture and creativity. If that doesn't start at that level, we're missing out. If that doesn't start, that we take into account our monuments, our historic centers, our buildings, our heritage, our cultural heritage, we're missing out. So that needs to be incorporated. And the other thing, the fifth, that I think it needs to be done, is to facilitate conditions for network development and specialization of agents, sectors, always linked to cultural and creativity. And this is artistic expressions, local knowledge, cultural diversity, what we're doing here. We need to have people sitting down in the same room, collaborating, and leveraging with others' advantages and capabilities. It's the other way, it's the only way to move forward. And I'm going to give you, if you allow me, a sixth one.
Thank you.
I'm just very happy to be here, so. Scale. I mean, I think Grenada did an amazing job trying to be or hoping to be the pioneer in this discussion about one Caribbean region, Creative Caribbean. But alone would not be able to do. You need to join forces with other islands. You need to make this a large, scalable solution, an opportunity, so everyone can tap into it. That would require definitely difficult conversations with your neighbors, but also very fruitful conversations when you will see and identify the opportunities. And this is my bonus one. That's where we can help. I mean, our banks are designed and are made to sit down on the table with all the parties to provide either technical assistance, but not imposing, providing what is out there that could apply and that could be implemented and adjusted to the local reality, and hopefully also to identify financing opportunities for these amazing projects that needs to be financed. Thank you, Orlando.
I know, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask again, are you ready for the challenge of leading the OECS on the One Creative Caribbean agenda? Thank you, thank you. Listen, my friend, distribution and market access has always been a challenge, and as Anel said, if we're going to approach this, we need to approach it collectively. Are there any organizations regionally that currently assist in that type of work, creating market access and facilitating distribution? If not, how can we go about doing that? Because I see it as central in order for our creators to be able to have the kind of access we need internationally.
Well, they are. In reality, thanks again, and I first want to commend the government and for this initiative. I think it's excellent. And I do, yes, there are organizations that work with facilitating market access. But the issue is not just about market access. We always argue beyond the access, it's about penetrating the market. Because you could have access but no penetration. And therefore we need to look, sort of take a step back when we start to talk about market access to where we are here in Grenada and what we are trying to do with the One Creative Caribbean that we need to put in place so that we can actually access and penetrate that market. Because if you're going to be talking about a good, you need to look at where you are from the standpoint of your standards and the quality of the products that you produce. That gives you access, that gives you entry into a market that persons want to buy a product, can buy a product. So we have to look at some of these issues when we start to talk about access in the market. So I'll prefer to respond to the question rather than just saying, yes, there are institutions, but to guide us more in terms of what we need to do as a country to be able to access that market and penetrate the market. And then, I'm going to slow down for Angel. And then on the issue of, whether you're talking from a service, you would have your technical barriers at the border, and you'll have your other regulatory barriers internal. So I think what we need to do, if we have to think about market access and to structure this program properly, we need to understand, and both Dr. Fletcher mentioned it, Dr. Jules mentioned it, I think Angela, we all seen it. We prioritize. And once we've identified these sectors, we then need to go down to the granular to address the issue of the technical and non-technical barriers to entry into these markets. And once we have addressed that, the market access then becomes just smooth, penetration becomes smooth, you can trade. And so, yes, there's support, and I think, as Angela said, working with the development organizations within the region, whatever it is with the CAF or SIF, whatever programs that we have, we develop the proposals, we look at the sector, we see what is needed, and we can access, and we can get the support to be able to access. But I think it has to start beyond just about organizations getting access, but going to developing the product or your service to a point where they can actually penetrate the market. And these same organizations will get you there. So I believe some of the good points that were already made by Dr. Jules and we have been speaking about, I think it's also on your roadmap in terms of having that platform is very critical for the access, because a conversation needs to be had, a relation needs to be developed. In new economic theory now, it's not just about making a profit, but building relationships. And if you have a good relationship, everything then flows. So build a relationship with the markets that you want to be able to access so that they can enter the market. Craft items, sometimes the first point of trade is not necessarily a big shipment leaving your country, but somebody leaves your home with that small craft item, a painting, and somebody sees it, they come to visit you, they like it, they tell you next time you come up, bring. You start your suitcase trade as you know it. And then that's when the market goes, the tourism. And so if you're going to talk about access, I've said it every time I come here, trading and access is not only about leaving. You can trade, and when the services come in, you also trade from your tourism, which is so critical. And in line with what Angel said, the issue of your development agenda. So once we tie in everything and we have a cohesive approach, market access, market penetration can run quite smoothly.
Thank you. So Dr. Jules, the gentleman who's advocating Grenada's role in leading this agenda toward the OECS, we are certainly ready to embrace this bold initiative and bold mission. It requires One Creative Caribbean requires a harmonized approach towards developing the creative sector. Common policies, common legislation, common access to funding, and certainly education. A big one is policy and legislation. How can the OECS support us in that first step?
Well, I listened carefully to Alison, and the issue of policy is a huge area that needs to be attended to with some urgency. And it's not attractive work, but it's going to require serious effort on the part of all of us in the OECS. One of the strengths of the OECS is the whole issue of harmonization of policy, harmonization of direction. But let me emphasize that for us, harmonization does not mean sameness, because that's something that people often assume, that when you talk about working together, it means everybody must be on the same page at the same time doing exactly the same thing. No. What we try to do is to create the frameworks that enable whatever differences exist among member states or nuances of policy to be accommodated within a common framework, but that framework provides us with a sort of skeletal unity that can bring us all forward together. In the policy work, although much of that is work done by experts like Alison, we also believe that the stakeholders have an important role to play in defining those policies. And that's why I spoke earlier about the configurations that we try to create. So working groups across the OECS, bringing together representatives of the creative sectors together with the legal drafts people, a lot of debate, discussion, looking internationally at best practices, drawing on our colleagues at the World Bank, CAF, the other multilateral institutions to see what is the international best practice and how can we adopt and adapt that where we don't have these policies to define something that works effectively for us. So we are committed to this process. It is going to require some resources, but as I've said many times in this meeting, I don't think our problem in the Caribbean is money, it's imagination. If you really want to achieve something, whatever the limitations are, you will find a way of making it happen. The important thing is the will, the commitment, and the solidarity to keep it going.
Thank you. So we have a vision, we have strategy, we have access to funding, specialists to help us with the technical work, and an organization to drive the agenda for us. So I'm going to open up the floor to the participants. If you have any questions to our panelists, One Creative Caribbean. It's an idea. We've had many regional bodies. This could be another movement. Is any? Okay. Anybody has any questions at this point for the panelists? While we await the drivers of PAN 525, a white minivan, you're needed outside, and PAK 281, you're also needed outside. Yes, we have one person on the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Roy Lewis. I do have a question. It's for any one of the panelists, probably you, Orlando. Mm-hmm. And my question is simple. I kind of admire Roosevelt, and he says, walk soft, carry a big stick. To me, the big stick here is everything that's been said here for the past couple of days. And I would like to know if there's any way that that is available to either persons here and who maybe speak to get a copy of this information to take back to our communities, our churches, et cetera, et cetera.
So, if I got the question, you're asking, the presentations will be available?
Totally catch
Yes.
the question.
Yes, so all the presentations will be made available to the participants. We'll create a link on our website, creativeaffairs.gd for you to download. And we have a database of all the creatives who are registered here today, and we'll distribute it via that database also. So you will have access to it. Additionally, all the videos and live streaming will be packaged and distributed to yourselves also.
Thank you.
Welcome. The light, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. Over and over the point being raised about associations, forming associations so that, you know, the different groups and, you know, could themselves go about the process of creating and advancing their cause. What I would like to have is that at least when we leave this forum, that there is some kind of way we can start the process of building that association, whether the office can help to facilitate.
In the subsectors, so the filmmakers, the musicians, the visual artists, the publishers, you guys have to form your individual associations and craft what you want for your individual sectors. We are facilitators and enablers.
Orlando, if I can add to that, it's not only about mobilization, it's also about what I would call evangelization. Each of you here who have been so active in this process should take on the responsibility of engaging other artists, persons who are not here, persons from other islands that you're connected with, and encourage them to sign up, sign in, participate in the process. Because, you know, that creative sector, you know, we looked at the global and economic possibilities, but the scale of the creative sector is really, frankly, unknown to us in the OECS. Who are the artists in each country? We may know some of the more prominent ones. There are a lot of young people with aspirations to be artists, a lot of talent that needs to be discovered. So we really have to be, it's no way that a government department can create a list of artists in the country. It has to be artists in the community reaching out to their friends, reaching to colleagues overseas to get them all signed up. I've spoken to Orlando about the need for the participant list in this conference to become a nucleus for a database of the OECS of the creatives, right? So, and then we can then reach out.
Orlando, in line with that, we have not used that word in quite a while, unleash. What I want you all to, we have been speaking over the last few days, I think we all came with that energy. I know for sure, I'm still very pumped up, right? A lot of energy in terms of what we need to do. And as the creative, you all need to unleash that creativity. I think there's still, I like to see the vibe, the energy that's going. But I think what we're all saying is that it has to come from you. Nobody knows your good, your service more than you. And while we will be here to facilitate, that energy, you have to want it, and we will help you. So unleash that creativity, unleash that spirit you have inside of you, and let's get this thing going and let Grenada lead this process for the development of the creative sector. I just want to push that to you all. You all have to do it. It starts with you, not with the government, not with the facilitators. It starts with you. Find the people in your circle and push them together. Get them energized.
Doctor, you want to make a point?
Yeah, if I may just add to the last question posed and to the responses provided thus far. If I recollect well, there is a service-based organization that already exists. I think it's part of an outcome of some CARICOM's decision. It is based within the structure of the GIDC.
Is it the Coalition of Services?
It may not, the coalition
of Services.
The Coalition of Services.
Network of coalitions of services.
Absolutely, yes. That exists, and that could become the part of the forum or to which people coalesce to get things done. I am not sure on one fundamental thing though, is whether to what extent that services organization relates to the creative arts, to what extent there is that synergy or there is this coming together of the two ideas. But it is something that is worth looking after. I think government, in fact, finances it.
Yes.
It is financed by government.
Yes.
So let us leverage that as well. I am very mindful in saying this because in a discussion I had earlier on with Dr. Jules on Wednesday, there is something he tempered me on. Not necessarily on this event here, but another issue where we're talking about. And he said, sometimes we are rushed to talk about the development of new organizations, forming new entities here and new entities there. But maybe there is something that already exists that we need to pull out of the cupboard, dust it off, wash it out, paint it over, right, and unleash on it, all right? So probably we need to look at that as an option to build in the institutional framework that is needed to move from here. If I may, Orlando, as I have the stage here, I want to advise on something. Many a times we have these beautiful discussions, this unleashing of the spirit and the discussions of, all these nice and beautiful and wonderful things. And then we leave here and we go our separate ways into our separate world, and then things really fall apart, things fall down. Now, again, it is up to all of us here to work together to make it happen. This is a wonderful space. The last time I felt so good about things, Grenada, and the future, and the pivoting of things to come was way back when I was a youth and a student. I am feeling this spirit today. The spirit is back, the spirit has been revived, and I see some smiling faces around certain tables. I may call one name, Dr. Crawford is smiling brilliantly, and I think she understands what I speak of, and might be others in the podium. So let us leverage what we have. Let us take advantage of this moment.
Malaika?
Check, check. Hi, I'm Malaika Brooks-Smith-Lowe. Thank you so much for this event. It has been amazing. And just in terms of the last thing that was said about leveraging what's already there, a lot of the challenge is capacity building. Many of you know that I co-founded Groundation Grenada years ago, which was an interdisciplinary organization and attempts at making sure that we had a non-discrimination clause in the Constitution that also protected people of various sexual and gender identities. And we were unable to receive funding from UNAIDS through Trinidad, and our representative really was shocked at the conversations he was having with the bank, trying to prove that we were a legitimate organization that was trying to get funding, and we weren't able to continue. So there are organizations that exist that need infusions of fresh energy, but also hopefully with this change in government, there's more policy change around allowing for funding, even when views may be different, that is allowed. So just in regards to that. And what I wanted to say today was, it wasn't actually a question, it was just to say I would love to see more diversity in terms of the panels and the speakers in regards to gender. I love seeing all these incredible, powerful men, and it's amazing. I love me some George. I love a lot of what I heard, but I heard the women being evoked in the presentations. Fee Noel talked about her grandmother. George talked about his grandmother. Killa talked about his mother. The women are in the room, but they're also kind of not in the room. And Allison, I've loved every time you're on stage, but also, we also have other powerful women and other women with insight. So I hope that next year, because I know there will be a next year, we can see some of the incredible women here. I see all these powerhouse women on the stage.
Malaika, I have to agree with that point, and I will say there are tons of powerful women who are behind the scenes driving this also. You will get to meet them shortly.
Pleasant good evening, all. As a young creative, I must say thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orlando Remain. Thank you for the team. Thank you for this administration. I stand here overwhelmed as a creative because all of the things start. All of the things start. No, because I'm speaking to say, hearing about one Caribbean, hello, this is Unleash. This is Unleash. Grenada, this is Unleash. And Unleash is the beginning, the initiation of a revolution right here in Grenada. Come on now. Come on now. This is our time. And let me say this. I have visualized, I have dreamed, I have prayed, even in tears, and I kept it reticent. Why can't we see green wood? Why can't we see Carib wood? Enough Hollywood, enough Nollywood, enough Bollywood. Come on now. Come on now.
I like the one Orlando.
So let me end with this. This is high time, and I'm emotional, and I'm not afraid to show it. It is high time. Thank you. And let me say this. I ain't done. I'm unleashing, I ain't done. Sorry. Let me say this. Start the thing right. And I know you guys will, but what I'm saying it, something like this, don't rush the process. I said it already. Start it right. Let it be authentic. It's ours. Let we make it ours. And be careful. All you know what it means to read between the lines. Read big and real sense. So what I'm about to say, in making it ours, let we watch the influences. Hello. Because we don't want to lose self. Even in internationalizing what is going on here. Because Grenada is conception womb. And when Christopher Columbus come out and kill off somebody, he saw something, but like the divine God, he saw something and he said, this is conception womb. The womb right now is birthing, and let we birth it right. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jude Bernard. I'm the chairman of the almost defunct Coalition of Service Industries in Grenada. I must say that those 3 days, the last 3 days, were awesome. And I want to congratulate Orlando and his team. And I don't know how they did it, but you put out something here that is unbelievable. But you have to think of the next steps. I'm hearing a lot of, talk about people coming together, but people always need leadership. People always need structure for them to move forward. Creative people tend to be I would say individualistic in many ways. But in order for them to rise and to go to the next level, they need organization, they need structure, they need encouragement. And this already exists. Someone was asking about what is there, and Dr. Fletcher alluded to the fact of the coalition. And the coalition doesn't exist only in Grenada, but throughout CARI Forum. And there is also a network of coalition of service industries for the OECS. It's just that it has been left to flounder to the point where it's almost at the point of death. But that structure that is responsible for the development of not just the creative services, but all services, from the hard hat, engineers, architects, to the soft touch of the massage therapists and everything in between, including the creative services, are part of that umbrella of the Coalition of Service Industries. And as I always say, the coalition is an association of associations. So it encourages people of like mind to associate. Because when you associate, when you come together with your energies and your zeal, you can self-regulate, you can set standards, you can set up a proper mechanism for training and development, you can receive funding, and so many things can happen. Many of the things I heard mentioned this week, very excellent things about how to get the contracts done, how to get paid. All of those things are included in a program by the coalition called services go global. 20 units or more. And I think we have to unleash that sleeping giant, the Coalition of Service Industries, and let it be a part of that machinery moving forward. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. It is there. We've got a new system of energy. We're probably moving from the internal combustion to the electric, but it's still a car. It's going to still be a car and still has to move. And I want to say here this afternoon that the coalition is waiting and it's ready to work along with the Department of Creative Affairs to see that these dreams here become realities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I just want to go back to the question that was asked earlier. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget what I was going to ask. All right, what is your advice to all of us, the creatives, on creating these bodies that you mentioned, right? When we've been cultured from young to be competitive and contentious on a peer-to-peer level, right? I'm asking because we've tried creating associations in the past, and with the lack of administrative and institution building specialists, people with the knowledge and ability to construct such organizations, it tends to degrade into subgroups, internal fighting, and eventually fall apart. So the question is, knowing that we've been cultured this year for how many years? This is the start of new chapters. How now do we start changing that so that we can get the peers involved in a constructive way as opposed to competing as to, okay, I want to lead and I want to be the CFO and I want to be in charge of finance and I wanted this, and eventually nothing happens.
Anybody? Any takers?
I think we can all have input, but I always like to say success follows success. And we start to work with the willing. You can't expect everybody to be on board. We are individuals, yes, we are individuals. And so there would be fallout if we keep saying that. If we are not positive, if we keep seeing the glass as half empty, we'll never try. So for me, it has happened, yes. In my earlier days here in Grenada, we set up the Coalition of Service Industries. But the point is that we are aware, yes, there was that issue of trying to get associations, and they fall apart. But you work with the willing, and I do believe that success follows success. So you work with the willing, you can't be it to everybody. You work with who you have, who are willing to work with. Success follows success. Obviously, we will try to put a safety net as such to deal with those that will fall out. But you cannot, and everybody cannot agree with what. Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. But my thing is that we recognize that, yes, we have been ingrained and you've gone about being individual, but I think we can still come together and success would drive success, and we'll pull each other along, knowing that there will be fallouts. We put that safety net in place. That's just my humble opinion.
Thank you, Alison. Anybody else want to chime in on this?
No? Yeah, I would want to add a little to this critical question that you have laid it out right, my brother, that we have been culturized in a very competitive environment. And certainly for the artists, in many persons in the artistic industry, it's about competition. Because one of the things that by your art, you define yourself. Your art defines you. So there is always this issue of being self. If you look back at all the successful bands, you go back in history, in musical history, Michael Jackson and his brothers, right? One person go this way, the rest go that way, but the great talent continue to spur on. So I will end by advising on this. Cooperate to compete. Cooperate to compete. You can compete as individuals. You can compete for your individual space. But for the industry and for the forward movement of the industry, for the unleashing of the talent, you need structure and you need organization. And that's where the cooperation comes in. So my word is cooperate to compete.
Okay, so we'll take the final question.
Afternoon. It's not a question. I just wanted to give a last piece before we wrap it up. I honestly believe that we have to change our mindsets towards this. Because this is not a simple task that we're embarking on going forward. And continuing this for the longevity that we're trying to, we must wash our minds of the way we used to think and once process thoughts and once express emotion of dislike about something or constructive criticism and encouragement that we give to others must change, and the manner in which we deliver it. Yeah, we have to change how we speak to people when we're trying to tell them, well, my brother, you're doing well, but I think you can do better. We have to know how we speak into people. We have to know that we have to give an energy of positivity when we're giving that criticism and not fight on each other. We must, because if we do not change our mindsets towards creating this positive, beautiful future that we want for ourselves, it will wither very quickly. So I urge all of us here, because I don't think the people here are the people who would be part of the tearing down or part of the gossip or part of the comments that do no uplifting. But I want us to encourage our friends, our people, our peers. We start talking different. We start saying the things that are going to make people, wow, that's an interesting perspective. Let's start talking different so that this would be an actual reality because we're thinking differently. And we have to start doing it on a continuous basis. We have to meet and talk to each other like this, right? So that it becomes natural, because this hasn't happened in my lifetime. And I'm not so young. Yeah? So I just urge everyone here who's listening to go forward and let's be positive. Let's change our mindset and let's be helpful and constructive with each other and be our brother's keeper, because we all want to see other people strive. It's okay to have somebody else, be better than you and you admire that. And you're all doing the same thing and they're better. And it's like, how do you do it? Tell me, how can I be as good as you? There are some people who are going to gatekeep. There are some people who are going to hold it back. But let's try. Let's at least try to change our mindsets and go forward and be positive. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I know you said last one, but there's something I really wanted to share, and I promise I will be short. Can I? Okay. What I noticed today in our breakout sessions was that we all had a lot that we needed to say, and we haven't had the space to say it. So not the platform, but the space, the location, the area where we can gather and discuss. So even though this 3-day conference is over, I don't know how possible it would be for, this is more to you, Orlando, for the ministry to facilitate spaces in a sort of a town hall sort of format for each discipline, where we can know, okay, at this time, on this day, and this week, I can go here and meet other people who are specific to my discipline. A writer's forum, a visual artist forum, a dancer's forum, a film forum, where we can finish knocking out the details of what it is that we need so that we can come and present it to the ministry, because we really haven't been able to do that.
The point is taken, and the answer to that is yes. I also want to encourage us to use digital technology so we can convene much easier. We have persons in the rural communities, in the urban communities. Technology really brings us together, or can bring us together. So, but we will certainly do our part to facilitate that process. Oh, wow. So,
Just quickly, one of the things that we've used very effectively in the OECS is WhatsApp groups. I have a WhatsApp group of heads of government alone and myself and the governor of the central bank. every ministerial grouping is on WhatsApp as a group. We have, for example, Ministers of Education of the OECS as one group. We have permanent secretaries. We have the chief education officers. At the time of Zika, for those of you who remember the outbreak of Zika, which was a mosquito-borne disease, we moved from having the next level, from the level of the ministers to the chief medical officers. And because of the threat of mosquitoes, we set up a grouping of the environmental officers in the ministries of health. It was the first time that these officers were even getting to know who their counterparts were. And to this day, that group still exists, and they are collaborating with each other using that virtual technology. So don't underestimate the power. It's not always about physical spaces, and people, like on the heads of government groups, sometimes the head of government will post something. What is the policy of your colleagues on a certain matter? And within minutes, they respond to each other. So it provides us a means of instantaneous communication and deepens the collaboration.
Check. Yes, I'll be very quick. Something that came up in the workshops is platforms where we can all put our art together and have these communications. This is something we can do right now. This is something we can do this evening. Have you guys heard of Reddit? It's a website that you can essentially have conversations, you can post links, have in-depth discussions, post links and everything. We have everyone's emails here tonight. We have a website that everyone knows. I think we can make a subreddit, a community, literally post it today, and everyone have access to talk to each other and have these conversations literally tonight, literally this weekend. Thank you.
So as we wrap up, guys, any final comments on the question of a one creative Caribbean? What does this mean? How do we move it forward?
One creative Caribbean is something that we all have individually and collectively to resolve to make happen. And it literally takes 5 minutes. I was sitting with Simon at lunch today, and we were discussing what are the options. One of his ambitions was to do a video on climate change in the Caribbean in small states, so that it can be a powerful representation of the pain that we suffer from climate change. I called the head of environmental unit at the OECS on WhatsApp video, and we agreed right there. It started. He's agreed to do the scripting, and that's all it takes.
Alison?
I believe that Dr. Jules laid it out in terms of that one of the last slides, where she took the liberty of setting up what that mapping can look like for the One Caribbean. And I think that's a starting point that we need to look at. And as a country, we need to prioritize our areas, look at that map that Dr. Jules has set out, and let's put, as I said before, go down to the granular and put the mechanisms in place to make this One Caribbean happen. So I think we have started already with what Dr. Jules has put forward.
Anil?
Looking at it from outside, to me, it seems like a building block strategy. I mean, I think this is the right path to start talking nationally.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, to prioritize, but don't lose the big picture. I mean, you need to build this with your neighboring countries. I mean, that's the only way forward. I mean, you need to develop scale.
Yeah, I would just like to challenge the organizers, ourselves, and certainly persons here, to take a deep dive into our communities. This conversation that took place here over the past 3 days need to be anchored in our villages, in our towns and our parishes throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And by so doing, we'll be building the genuine One Caribbean link that is required. So let's drill down to our communities, take the conversations to our people, find the talent within the villages. That's where it comes from, our villages and our communities, especially the rural communities, if I may say so. All right, so thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your listening ear and participation.
Thank you, Orlando, for moderating this final session. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to an amazing We have come to the end of an amazing 3 days of workshops, presentation, inspirational speakers. And I wanna thank you. I wanna say thank you. Special thanks to all our friends who traveled across the world to be with us today, and the last 3 days. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. I want to say thanks to our sponsors, the Government of Grenada, CAF, Development Bank of Latin America, Coyaba, Mount Cinnamon, Spice Island, Beach Resort, NLA, the Office of Creative Affairs. I want to say thanks to our suppliers, the people who are working the cameras, the photographers, all of you. And I want to say special thanks to the planning and execution team, and I hope I don't forget anybody. Kareed Clement, Hervin Hood, Akira Patterson, Christopher D. Riggs, Alison Francis, Eugene Gittins, Aquino Romaine, Teddy Frederick, Ricardo Keynes-Douglas, Anisha Lett, Tamika Gilbert, Abby Jeremiah, Colleen Perriman, Rian Solomon, Margaret Belfont, Faith Thompson, Gail Purcell, and of course, the brainchild of this amazing event, Orlando Romaine. And to my fellow creatives, you have been amazing. Thank you, and remember, the problem is not the money, it's imagination. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And ladies and gentlemen, the time has come. Unleash your potential, unleash your energy, and unleash your creativity. On the count of 3, I want everybody to say with me, unleash. On my count, 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Have a wonderful evening. My name is Neela Etienne. It has been a pleasure to serve you. Join us outside. We have a concert, a 3-hour concert, and of course patronize the booths. All our creatives are there waiting for you.
2 million years ago, there came a great rumbling from deep down in the bowels of the ocean floor. Earth with wind, wind met fire exploding with awesome fury, and the mighty seas were parted. Just like that, we were born. Volcanic lava, liquid and fluid. Volcanic rock, rich and resilient and ready to sustain life.
And winged creatures of the air rained seeds upon the rock, and the seeds took root and grew. Ginger lilies, lantanas, petunias, heliconias, poinsettias, bougainvilleas.
And stately palm trees sprung up along the rocky bays and sandy beaches. And the rainforest grew up in the hills beyond our reaches.
And so our rock became paradise, with flowers and trees and birds and bees and people, blessed and highly flavored people. Olive, vanilla, and chocolate mixes, people searching for wealth, survival, and power, and other types of fixes.
And the people on the rock were blended in a stew. The Caribbean pepper pot, the Grenadian callaloo. And people brought stories and made stories. Protagonists, antagonists woven into the narrative of the people. Little did they know that their mere existence was clay to sculpt a culture, birth tradition, give meaning to motion and life to a nation, inspiration.
Look around. What we lack in size, we pack in imagination. Imagination, our untapped resource. We source from outside what we have innately within.
But I can feel something coming. Something is coming. Something is about to start. A spark is all we need to unleash this fire.
From the minds of the creative.
Minds given by the creator.
Infused with color and song.
Ideas and rhyme.
Perfected with time.
Aged wine.
Blended with emotion and soul.
And stories untold. An intoxicating concoction.
Our market, the world.